Hi, I'm Marianne Binetti, and one of the gardening questions that I get a lot from all over the country is when to prune certain plants. So, for instance, you're supposed to prune roses in early spring. You prune certain clematis in early spring. And early spring is a broad definition. So here's a gardening tip for you. When you see crocus in bloom, when you see the little early blooming dwarf daffodils, when you see the very early blooming hellebores in flower, that's when you know it's early spring in your region. It could be February, it could be April, depending on where you live. So I'm seeing the crocus are in bloom in my yard, the Pacific Northwest, these little dwarf daffodils. I know it's early spring, and there's three things I always prune and fertilize in early spring. And that is clematis, and this is a clematis plant that I'm going to teach you how to do the ponytail cut on. The hellebores, and these hellebores are early blooming perennials, and I've already started cutting off their leaves as soon as possible in the winter. Start cutting off their leaves. And then finally the roses, because early spring is a good time to prune back and fertilize your roses. So let's get started with the ponytail cut of the clematis. Okay, so here is a clematis. It blooms in about May or June. It's a Jacqueminey clematis, pretty tough clematis. And it's time to prune it back using the ponytail cut, which just means I'm going to gather all these vines in one big lump, and then I'm just going to go through and cut everything down to about 2 feet from the ground. Now, I only do the ponytail cut once every 2 or 3 years. Otherwise, I do a stair-step cut, which means I leave some a little tall, third tall, a third about medium, and then a third right to the ground. So this severe pruning of the ponytail cut is done when your vine's really getting out of control, your clematis, and you just kind of want to start fresh. So here is the little tripod teepee was growing up. I could take that out, but I think it's in there pretty good. I'm going to just cut around it. But here's great news. As I was picking this up to start pruning it, I noticed there's a new clematis that has rooted into the ground, because over the summer, when a piece of this clematis vine was getting so long, I went ahead and I pushed it into the ground, a little bit of rock on top, and then it rooted. And so after I get done pruning this back, I will just dig up this clematis vine, this brand new clematis, move it to another part of the garden. So don't be afraid. I've never known of anybody who has killed their clematis by pruning it too much or the wrong way. What you want to just remember is pruning stimulates growth. That is why we wait until early spring, when we see daffodils and crocus in flower, to go ahead and cut back all this clematis. Now, this still looks like a mess. That's okay. You can, sometimes I just pull out all the dead stuff. But this, clean up. This is also a good time to look for snails or slugs underneath here. They won't be eating up your, oh, look at, here is another clematis right here that had touched the ground, and now it has rooted. So I will be able to dig that up too with some new clematis. Okay, I've got that pruned back, and now I'm going to go on to prune the roses. Okay, so here it is, the same bed. Remember, the daffodils are blooming and the crocus are blooming. So I am just going to start cutting this rose. And this is a shrub rose or a landscape rose, which means I can just shorten everything and not worry about inward facing buds or where I'm going to cut it, because actually I'm looking for anything dead, diseased, damaged, and anything taller than about 18 inches, I just prune off. And that's going to stimulate growth. And after I prune both the clematis and the rose, I fertilize. And I use Osmocote, this slow-release plant food. I dig it into about the top 1/3 of the soil. How do I know how much Osmocote to use? Now, a lot of people ask me that, And the instructions are right on the back of the label. And what it says is that 1 capful for every 2-gallon pot, or 4 square feet. So I've measured it so many times, and I've done this so many times, I know by looking how much that is. But what you want to do is look in the back of the label, 1 capful for 4 square feet, or for a 2-gallon pot is about right. And then you just kind of mix it into the top 1 to 3 inches of soil, and you're done. And one more plant to prune in this bed in early spring, and that is to make sure I get all the old leaves off of the hellebores that are in flower. So let's finish that. And finally, if you have any hellebores in your garden early spring, and if you have not yet cut off the leaves, you have these great big evergreen leaves. This is last year's growth. Cut those off so you can more easily enjoy the beautiful blossoms. I do like to float these blossoms in my bird bath. I like to use them, set them on moss, and enjoy them indoors. There's so many things you can do with the hellebore blossoms. And my tip when you're dealing with the hellebores is get really in there. I'm using these tiny little, these are called needle nose trimmers, so I can get in really, really tight and get way down and get the entire stem and the leaf. The reason is some of these hellebore leaves will get a fungus growing on them, and you want to get in there and get these old leaves off so the fungus does not spread onto the blossom. Here you can see some of these petals have turned brown. The leaf fungus got onto the hellebores, and I really should have pruned these leaves back a little bit earlier. So there you have it. Early spring in your garden is when the crocus are in flower and the daffodils are in the flower, and that's your chance to get out, start pruning back, start fertilizing. Spring is here. This has been Marianne Binetti with easy answers for great gardens.
If you enjoyed these gardening tips, subscribe to our channel so you can get updates on new videos and stay in the know about all things gardening. Click the red subscribe button below. See the description below for more information about how to connect with us on PlantersPlace.com, Facebook, and Instagram.